I want to share my experiences on my sim racing journey if you're a new or challenged sim racer. This video is not aimed at the super fast aliens out front, but at us old fellas in the mid-pack and near the rear end of the grid, many seconds off the pace. Sim racing can be an intimidating community when you start, with quite a few entitled brats out there who think they know everything. So I'm gonna take a few minutes to share what I have learned and hopefully help you improve from the get-go and above all, have more fun. Right, let's get started. I've heard so many times from folk joining the Bongo racing community that I'm too slow to race with you guys. I'm seconds off the pace at most places, but I'm trying my best. It's usually said with a sense of wanting to be better, which is good, but also with a sense of desperation or even guilt, which is the last thing you want to get from your new hobby. So I'm going to try my best in this video to give some simple tips, not only to improve your driving, but also to remove the guilt and help you enjoy yourself more when sim racing. And by the way, I am approaching this video not as an alien level driver, but rather as a mid-pack driver who continues to go through these steps on a regular basis. In some of my races, I am a top 10 driver, and in others I am dead last. But I've learned how to enjoy myself on track, and sim racing is now something that I look forward to and think about every day. Hopefully you can follow these tips and you can find the joy in sim racing as I have. Chapter 1. Advice for my rookie self. You may have heard the term KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Applying that here means learn the basics. Here's a question for you. What have you looked into more? Ideal corner lines or your sim racing hardware? Braking techniques or your new pedals? It's easy to get hung up on the new and shiny kit, but the racing basics or the fundamentals are far more important to move you up the grid. Build on what you know about racing and corner lines, how braking distances affect lap times, and the importance of corner exit speed, and what understeer and oversteer are. Most of the faster sim racers have a solid understanding of the principles of racing technique and apply them to their benefit. If you watch videos from alien level sim racers, a lot of what they do better than us boils down to braking later and following corner lines that maximize their corner exit speed. The car setup matters, but in all likelihood an alien with a base setup will beat most of us with a great setup with a few seconds to spare. When you watch alien hot laps, the things that immediately jump out at me are how late they brake, how wide they run on corner entry and exit, and how much curb they take at apex, along with how early they get on the throttle as they exit corners. Understanding how and why they do this will come to you as you learn the fundamentals. A vital thing to keep in mind when you're learning these race fundamentals is being less aggressive is most likely faster. It seems counterintuitive or even contradictory, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Keeping the car under control should be of primary focus as you learn. Try not to overdrive the car. There are countless techniques over and above the fundamentals you may have heard of, like trail braking and slip angle, but if you're multiple seconds off the pace, start with making the fundamentals second nature. Try not to get lost in new techniques before mastering the basics. Learn what an ideal corner line looks like, along with the effects of late braking and early throttle. Keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple, simmer. If you're offended by stupid, okay. For some solid follow-up to this video, I'd recommend spending some time with Scott Mansell, Driver61 on YouTube. His free Drivers University series on race fundamentals is superb, well worth your time for a bit of study. I'll leave a link below. Chapter 2. Practice. Put in the time on track. Okay, we're learning new things and it's time to take to the track. Woohoo! Practice doesn't always make perfect, but it definitely makes permanent. So before you jump in, remember practice locks in your habits, good and bad. Always keep in mind what you have researched about race fundamentals from wherever you have found that information, whether it's Driver61 or elsewhere. Practice those techniques rather than chasing lap times. Usually the leader of the race is also setting the fastest lap times, and of course, the fastest qualifying time takes pole. This concept is pretty basic, so it's easy for us to think of only the clock when we are practicing new techniques. We judge how well we are doing by the delta time. Is it green? Is it red? If it's red, we are failing. Let's break this way of thinking. Instead, think of the lap times as an extension of the proper execution of technique. It's easy to be sucked into the mentality of, wow, I just set my personal best by half a second. This really works. On the surface, this feels great, but if the laps before and after were invalidated red laps or much slower than your average, you might not actually be making progress. It's far better to run a series of laps 1/10 faster than your previous PB than a one-off lap that's several tenths faster. The learning here is that practice isn't about putting in incredible lap times, but building and reinforcing correct habits. Hot lap sessions are for seeing how fast you can go over a single lap. As I have said many times, a fast lap, a race, does not win. Think of practice as how cleanly and consistently you are driving. Improved lap times will be the consequence of your improved driving rather than the goal. It will be impossible to improve your driving techniques without getting better lap times. I'll say that again. It will be impossible to improve your driving techniques without getting better lap times. Our first target should be smooth laps on the racing line. Let's not worry ourselves about the clock too much just yet. Keep your corners smooth and braking and acceleration under control. Smooth and consistent is what you're shooting for. Once you can run a series of laps cleanly, try pushing your braking distances forward bit by bit. You'll have to use more brake pressure, which puts the car at a higher risk of losing control. So experiment with shortening the braking distance while staying in control. The second thing to try is getting on the power earlier. From experience, I know that hitting that pedal hard on corner exit is challenging. Too much too soon will cause you to lose control, so you need to gradually add more throttle on corner exit. Just like with braking, as you begin to consistently run more clean laps, experiment here, pushing the car a little bit harder each lap while keeping it under control and stable. Smooth is fast. Chapter 3. Consistency. Steady as she goes. One of the biggest things I have learnt since starting my sim journey is that positions on track can be gained just by being consistent. I've often finished in races in a higher position than I qualified. In professional esports leagues, I'd say that this doesn't quite play out, but for us normal folks who race with LFM or other online lobbies, just keeping the car on track can get you ahead. You often come across super fast one-lap wonders who push their cars so far beyond their skill set they just can't keep it on track. They whiz past you one lap and then you see them in the kitty litter on the next. So even if you're losing lap time to one of these idiots and you're staying consistent, you can be well ahead of them by the end of the race. A very important part of building consistency is choosing what car you're going to drive and sticking with it. Every car has its own unique performance and handling quirks. I'm not saying that you're stuck with the car you pick forever, but while you build your practical understanding of driving fundamentals, you should pick one and learn and grow with it. You and your ride will come to an understanding about braking distances, how twitchy or not she is with throttle input, whether she tends to understeer or oversteer, field of view, and so much more. You and your partner will go through it all. These are all unique differences with cars, and it's important to minimize the number of these variables while you're learning. If you just can't enjoy yourself in a car, well, then change it. But the longer you stick with a car, the better you'll be able to monitor your progress. Chapter 4. Mentality. Relax and have fun. Telling someone to relax almost never works, especially with my wife. But here I am asking you to do the very same. If you're the slowest on the grid, and I'm speaking from experience here, it can be a stressful thing. pulling away last can be totally demoralizing, and when the inevitable overtakes come as the leaders catch up to you, the feelings of stress and being burdensome to the other drivers can be overwhelming. But here's something to consider. The person who is second to last is glad you're there because it means that they're not last. So don't worry about them. Every other driver on the grid is so preoccupied with their own race, they are not concerned about you in the slightest. As far as being lapped, if you're consistent and you're not driving dangerously, the overtaking cars won't give you a second thought. So don't worry yourself about being slow. Your time will come. How do we get to a positive mindset when we're at the back of the grid? It is harder, but it's doable. Personally, when I find myself on a grid that is well above my skill level, I find my pleasure here. First, can I find a little bit of time each lap by braking a tad later, taking an apex a little bit more aggressively, or getting on the par a little earlier? In other words, I race against myself. Can I be better on lap 11 than I was on lap 10? What can I do better? Where are those guys ahead of me braking? Or which corners are they taking on a different line than me? And secondly, how many people can I just overtake by being consistent? There is nothing more pleasurable to me than getting a freebie or two from an Egypt driver that's throwing it off track one too many times. I know, taking pleasure from someone else's misfortune isn't clever, but it's fun. Relax and have fun. Your progress will be hampered if you don't chill and have a good time on this journey. I have seen multiple racers throw in the towel because they've put themselves under way too much pressure to perform without pinning down the basics. When you find yourself in a race where you're struggling, stay positive and focus on yourself and the racing fundamentals. Let's wrap this up in a nice neat bow and get this video complete. If you're having a hard time on your sim racing journey, don't give up, don't feel bad. Stick with it and keep going and go back to those racing fundamentals every time. Put that knowledge into practice with a focus on consistency over single lap speed. And lastly, keep a positive mindset. Learning and practicing racing should be fun above all else. Thank you all so much for watching. Enjoy the journey. I'll see you on track. The inspiration for this video comes from Mike at SimRacing604. Thank you.
Then he waddled away.